Kids, I wanted to talk to you today about some of the takeaways, the more important takeaways I had from my UK trip. Originally, I was going to do a series of videos breaking down a lot of the funny and unique and wonderful memories. Um, but I haven't gotten everybody's permission to do that, so I don't like to talk other people's business. Um, Without their permission, obviously. And second, um, I watched a video from one of my travel mates, Misty Eyes, that really got me thinking um, or reflecting back on our journey on a totally different level. And this, for me, was a huge learning experience. And then I had a very unique moment yesterday that kind of all tied it together, and so I wanted to share this with you because for anyone that is mentally ill and feels like they're swept away and all this kind of stuff, and they feel like they're a burden and all this other things that go on with mentally ill people. Um, I wanted to share this because I never, well, I know that I'm mentally ill. I know I'm batshit crazy. So let's get that out of the way. But I thought I was dealing with it better than I am. And I learned I wasn't. So here's my takeaways from my UK trip. First of all, I have anxiety disorders. And as the years have gone on, they've gotten worse and worse and worse and much more frequent. And they're uncomfortable to be around. I'm uncomfortable having them, and people around me are uncomfortable when I'm having them. And sometimes I hurt people's feelings unintentionally because they take my anxiety disorder personally. And also it's gross because I usually physically sweat. I just get drenched in sweat almost instantly. It's frightening to watch. It looks like, something from like you'd see in a movie. It's like Space Alien. So of course I had anxiety attacks. I took my medication. I didn't think they were as bad as I expected them to be at some points, but I also learned kind of after the fact that some of them were really bothering my travel mates, and of course that's never my intention to hurt somebody and or bother them or make them feel uncomfortable. And so I had to like grasp the fact that I'm essentially a pain in the ass, and can be perceived as mean. I don't try to be mean. I mean, I can be really mean, but that's not my go-to nature. So that was the first thing I learned. Second thing was I had, and most important, I had a moment where I put myself in a situation that I probably, well, obviously looking back, shouldn't have. And I allowed myself to get my feelings hurt. And that's something I chose to do. Now, most times, when anybody does anything to me, I don't take it personally because I've learned not to take it personally. There's only a few times in my life that have, that you cannot but take it personally. But most times I can write it off as somebody else's issue or just one of my bad choices. So, but I decided for some unknown reason to take this really personally and got really hurt. And it only lasted for a few hours. But during those few hours, I had like this meltdown on Facebook. And I also had a meltdown while I was there. And it affected people from right there clear across the globe. And people that had nothing, even the people that were right there really had nothing to do with it. And the people even farther away had less to do with it. And some people took it amazingly personal. And it was shocking frankly. Um, I appreciate that, I got a lot of nice, oh, it's going to be okay, and, what can I do to help, and I'm sorry that you got hurt, and I appreciate that. But some people just got just pissed and offended or really hurt, and that was more devastating than the feeling, the hurt feeling that I had initially. So it was just like, instead of one cut, it ended up being like 8. So it really came as a eye-opening experience to me that I need to maybe isolate myself a little bit more than I do. I mean, even though I spend every day by myself in silence with my pets, I talk to them, but they, they roll their eyes at me because they get tired of listening to my bullshit too. So that kind of set me back. That really, and then I've noticed since then, there's been people treating me differently because they see me differently. And this has to do with one of the mental illnesses that I have battled with all my life. It drove my parents crazy, and it's driven everybody crazy, all my life. And that is adopted child syndrome. And one of the things that I do as an adopted child is I go out of my way to please people. And I try to anticipate their needs. I will be the first one to pay the check. I will be the first one to, invite you at no cost to come, enjoy something with me because I think you might like that. I do it out of the good, I do it with a good intention, but suddenly it seems that some people think that's really ugly because they think it's not personal. They think it's just my mental illness. So I'm really not doing it for them. But nothing could be further from the case because there's some people I won't do anything for. There's some people I wouldn't piss on if they were dying of thirst. So that hurt. That really became, something strange that I've never had before. Usually the problem is when I'm nice to people and they get close to me, then suddenly they want all that nice and they don't want me to be nice to anybody else. And that's just not my nature. And then that they get upset because I'm being nice to other people. And that's been a constant problem in my life as well. Forever. And even with my parents. And I just don't have this mentality that, there's only a certain amount and that there's not enough for everybody, so you got to just get as much as you can. I believe that, I have a faith that spirit manifests stuff infinitely. And so far in my life, that's what I've seen. And people that believe that, so far that's what I've seen happen in their lives. Now people that don't feel like there's enough usually get that usually comes true for them. So I just don't believe it because I don't want that to come true for me. So that was really, really mind altering. It started a chain reaction throughout all my friends, from my closest to some very distant people that I don't know very well. It started a chain reaction, and it's actually it actually has now taken away this desire that I had to be pleasing, if that makes any sense, or to anticipate people's needs, or maybe invite them, to come along when they might feel uncomfortable about that. So I won't be doing that anymore, for sure. Now, I have people that care about me deeply, and they were really pissed that I got myself in that situation again, and I had to hear about it. And I don't mind that. I like brutal honesty. And so I, in turn, generally don't filter anyway. So I take brutal honesty well because I dish it out, and it's not always pleasant. Now, very few times in my life I take things personally. Normally, whenever anything happens, I either find out what I did to feel that way, or I analyze the situation and realize it's someone else dealing with their own issue and they're just projecting their bullshit on it. And both things happen constantly. I'm not perfect. I put myself in stupid situations and allow myself to feel things that I shouldn't. And also, everybody has issues, and sometimes people don't realize they're projecting their bullshit on you, and they just go ahead and do that. And I put up with it a lot. I put up with the projection without really slamming my foot down in a really harsh way. I can, and I have, and sometimes I've been actually really violent about it. But you have to really work overtime to get me to be violent. But when you do, I'm not cute at all. I'm like, I go totally, excuse my French, fucking psycho if I have to get physical. So when I got home, I was still dealing with all this emotion and all these, things that had gone on, happy and sad, and, everything in between, and all these lessons that I learned. And then I had a moment that I'll describe it this way. The cruelest thing, the most hurtful thing that anyone has ever said to me in my entire life was my mother, Sal. Now, when I was in the UK, all of us had a reading from a clairvoyant medium. And towards the very end of my reading, my father brought my mother forward, and this was the woman's exact quote, kicking and screaming because she didn't want to be there. She doesn't like to be near you. Now, there's a history about that. Since she's died, she's come to torment me several times, and I've learned, at first, I was literally terrorized by her, but second, I learned how to kick her ass. And then she's got stronger, and I've gotten stronger, so we've had these battles once every 2 years or something. She'll pop in and make my life miserable for a couple of hours. Usually she tries to hijack my dreams. And and you can tell it's not your dream when she's there because it becomes her dream. It's really strange. It's hard to explain. But she came kicking and screaming and made it very clear to the medium that she doesn't like me at all and it wants nothing to do with me. And the feeling's mutual because I don't want anything to do with her. She said the cruelest thing that anybody could say to anyone while she was alive, and frankly, she died a lonely, odious cunt. Sorry for my French, but that's what she was, a lonely, odious cunt. She drove everyone away from her. And now in the afterlife, she's just like that. So good for her. But what she said was on the day of my little brother's memorial after he died, we had this huge memorial. Literally thousands of people showed up, like 3,000 people showed up to this rock. It was crazy. But after all of that day, which was a busy day for all of us in the family, my father and I drove her home, and she sat down on her couch, and then she just screamed out from the depths of her soul. And she looked right at me and my father, and she screamed, "My only son is dead." And then she just broke down into this heap. Now, I'm her oldest son, so I really, at that point, had nothing else to ever say. What do you say to someone that just screamed that in your face? The one that had your back while you were doing the work, trying to deal with your alcoholic husband and all this other stuff. So they were doing the domestic chores and doing the cooking and the cleaning and the shopping and everything else. Um, what do you do? There's nothing to say. I didn't say goodbye. I just turned around and walked away. And I sat on the hood of my father's car, and I waited for him to finish um, with her, and got in the car and we drove away. And my father spent some time trying to make that better, and I let him know, like, instantaneously, that will never be better, because some things you just cannot unsay, period. There's nothing you can do to unsay it. Now, I had a moment like that yesterday, and this is why I'm kind of making this video. It brought home that whole lesson that I learned about wanting to please people and being kind and being considerate and anticipating people's needs, and the whole adopted child syndrome finally got shattered yesterday. So as horrible as yesterday was, and it was horrible, I have never felt so emotionally just ripped to shreds as I had since my mother told me, her only son had died. It was like this watershed moment. So I'm thankful for it. It's going to be life-changing. I'll get used to it. I feel kind of empty, actually, because I'm no longer thinking about other people. I'm no longer sitting planning, saying, how can I make this better when this is coming up soon, or what can I do to, make a surprise, or someone, what can I get for somebody that would please them. I used to think about those things all day, every day, and I don't think about it anymore. I stopped thinking about it as of last evening. I just don't have it. It feels like this void, and I know I'm going to have to fill the void with something, but it's not going to be that ever again. I've finally gotten literally beaten, not physically, but emotionally. This has been beaten out of me. There's other things, there was other ramifications of the words that I heard yesterday that I'll deal with and try not to buy into, but it's going to be hard. It's going to be a process, and it was pretty wilting. It was as literally as wilting as what my mother said, essentially. So I'm working on it, but I'm really thankful for Misty and Robert and Peter and Mary and Nicola for the wonderful UK trip and all the lessons I learned and all the things I got to see and experience and taste. It was fantastic. So thank you all for that, and thank you for the wonderful laughs and some tough life lessons that I needed to learn. So I have to say, anytime you do anything, remember that there's more to it than just what you're doing. That there's always something to learn. There's always another level or 2 or 3 or 5 that you're experiencing at the same time. You just might not be aware of it. But if you stop and ponder it a little while, you can turn anything into magic. And now that I'm going to kind of reshape my life and try to give it a purpose, which I don't know what that's going to be, I'm looking forward to my next adventure, which is at the end of the month. I'm going to Savannah to go ghost hunting. So that should be kind of innocuous. But you never know. I mean, when I went to the UK, we had quite a few ghostly encounters and actually a couple possessions. And it was not pleasant to see your friend possessed and physically attacked, and then take that away and get yourself attacked. It was kind of icky. So ghosts, spirits aren't always fun. They can be really nasty. Um, the good thing about being me is that I let them in, or I'll intentionally take them away from somebody and let them jump in me, because once they get in this fun house, this crazy house, they want to get out of here as fast as possible. They never want to stick around. They'll try to push the buttons, but they realize the buttons don't work like normal buttons. And then it becomes like the funhouse effect, literally, and it becomes terrifying. That's another thing I learned while I was on the UK trip from this really nasty ghost. I learned that I can make them, without even trying, really uncomfortable inside of me. Between my sick, painful body and my twisted mind, it just terrifies them. It terrifies them more than they are angry, and that's kind of cool. I guess that's something that I never knew before. So that's all for now. I know it's a long video, but I needed to get that out, and I hope you all have a good weekend. I think that's what's coming up for the weekend. I don't really keep track of time anymore because I really don't care. I just sit home. So I just wait for my next alert saying, oh, you're going to be traveling in a week, and then I start getting packed. So talk to you later.